Hey guys! Welcome to another practice live stream. Still getting everything set up. Feel free to say hello in the chat. If you are watching the replay of the stream after it's live, feel free to go ahead and skip a few minutes in once we really get rolling with the music. Okay, just gonna give another minute here to get everything ready and allow people to arrive. Okay. Hi, yeah, I know I look fancy today. I wasn't actually trying to be fancy. It's just warm, so I'm wearing a dress, and this was a cello appropriate dress that I had, and I'm wearing my hair up because it's hot. Um, so this is really just a hot weather accommodation, but it does make me look a little more dressed up. Hey Justin, hi Bufar. Okay. Yeah, something's a little messed up with my stream page because it says only one person is watching on this computer, but I can see that 9 people are watching on that computer, so whatever, I'm not going to worry about it. Just going to go get in my cello seat, and then we'll get started shortly. As always, let me know if there are any issues with anything, especially sound and volume. Got my microphone here, which I'm moving around a little bit. Okay, so hello and welcome. If you have seen these live streams before, it's going to be what we usually have. If you're new to the live streams, these are basically real live practice sessions. I'm just going to be practicing the parts for my new album. I'm going to be playing violin sonatas with my good friend Laura. We're playing 3 different violin sonatas, Corelli, Vivaldi, and Handel, a really nice selection of music. And I will be playing all the Basso Continuo parts on my Baroque Cello. So that's what I'll be practicing today, are all these wonderful bass lines that I will be playing with Laura very soon. So I'll be talking a lot about playing Baroque bass line type music on the cello, of course, but it can apply to any instrument that might play a bass line in Baroque music. So that could be a bassoon, that could be an actual bass, that could be a viola da gamba, it could be a lot of things. So I'll just be kind of practicing and going through, talking about the parts, exposing you guys to the music a little bit. I will get the sheet music up once we get going, so you guys can follow along with the manuscript if you want, and it should be a good time. Hey everybody. All right. So maybe what I'll do, I did announce this ahead of time, which I don't normally. I know I'm very spontaneous with the live streams. I did announce this one a little bit ahead of time, but not a ton, depending on where you follow me. So I think what I'll do is get a little warmed up, as I always do. I'm probably just going to do a scale or 2, but just to get playing before I get right into the music. So I'm going to do a little bit of my usual warm-up stuff. Then I'll kind of go over everything again for all the people trickling in late, and then we'll get into the bass lines. Alrighty. And hopefully I won't get too hot, because we finally have the weather that I moved to LA for, which is nice, warm, hot, sunny weather. So the last live stream that I did, if you saw the live stream of the other bass lines that I went over from the album, I did mostly the Vivaldi Sonata. So I may touch on that today, but I'm not going to start with it since the other stream was mostly focused on that. I think I'm going to do Corelli first. And Corelli's in the nice friendly key of C major, so I'm just going to warm up on a C major scale just to get going. And if you are just arriving, feel free to say hi in the chat. continuation of warm-ups is play some octaves, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it. Basically, in continuo and bassline playing, we have octaves all the time. Almost every cadential formula that we have at the end of a phrase is going to have an octave, and we have to get used to hitting those octaves in tune pretty easily. So I have a little kind of scale octave warm-up thing that I do that I'll show you. I'm going to take just the C major scale, and then I'll do the octaves that way. And I see Bufarso asks, what purpose does the pinky have in the bow hold? And so, especially for the Baroque bow, which I'm using here, I play pinky on top, like a violin bow hold. And it basically serves as a counterbalance. So you can see if I use just the pinky, I can control this side of the bow. So when I want to just kind of feel the weight, especially like if I'm playing something and I want to get off the string, having that pinky be active really allows much more mobility with the bow, as opposed to being kind of stuck in place or having to lift with the whole arm. The pinky makes us mobile really fast. So it takes some getting used to if you don't play pinky on top, but I find it really useful on the Baroque bow. Hey Michael, welcome everybody. So I'm going to do this little octave warm-up, and then I'll do the intro one more time, and then we'll do some music. So if I take the C major scale, I'm going to just go through with octaves. I didn't silence my phone, sorry. The third octave out now as I get higher, not because I'm afraid to play the fourth position notes, but just because I am doing this for continuo purposes, so I am going to have to silence the phone. Because I'm doing this for continuo purposes, I don't think I have to shift into the fourth position notes. I'm going to keep it mostly in the bass line range. So now for the other notes, I'm just going to keep it to 2 octaves. Octave practice for continuo playing. I really do recommend that because if you haven't done it before, you might find it's actually a lot harder to get those octaves in tune than you may expect. So it's worth doing, because then when you hit those cadences in your bassline parts, it's like, oh, octave, I got that. Definitely worth doing. So welcome everybody who's here now if you got in late. So if you don't know, I am recording a new album, which is super exciting for me because I kind of got my start in the public world on Baroque cello by releasing self-produced albums. I recorded bass sounds all the way back in 2013, which was all unaccompanied Baroque cello music. And then I followed with Bass Sounds Evolved in 2014, which was more unaccompanied Baroque cello music, focusing more on the 18th century. The first album was more the 17th century. After those 2 albums, I started just focusing on YouTube, which is how I got all my hundreds of videos that I have on the channel now, was focusing on that. But I always knew that I wanted to come back and do another album at some point. I just wasn't sure what and how to go about it. So when I started talking to my friend Laura, who's an amazing Baroque violinist, I knew that that was the right decision to do an album with her. So we're going to be recording 3 Baroque violin sonatas on period instruments. It's going to be just the 2 of us. So even though I'll be playing the continuo part on the cello, it should have a real duet feel because of the 2 string instruments and nothing else. So I'm hoping it's going to sound like a duet album, even though it's technically violin sonatas. But violin sonatas are actually my favorite repertoire ever. I love playing them. I love accompanying them. We're recording sonatas by Vivaldi, Handel, and Corelli. So it's accessible music that I think anyone will enjoy, but it's not really tired pieces that we've all heard a million times. So we are raising funds for the album. It's a pretty modest fundraiser when you consider it's putting together a full-length album that's going to be digitally, internationally available online everywhere. So if you're curious about the fundraiser, what we're doing exactly with the album, all that kind of stuff, the link is obviously right below me, really big. And then it's also in the description of the video if you want to click on that. So pretty much everything that I'm doing is all about the album for the next couple months. Laura will be coming to record later this month, which is super exciting, but in the meantime, I've been preparing my part and doing these live streams kind of talking about the bassline continuo stuff. And then when she gets here to record, we'll be able to do even more stuff together, recording videos, live streams, everything. It's going to be really fun just kind of sharing the process with you. And the album is going to be so awesome, and one of the things that we're doing on the fundraiser is that we're allowing, for just a $10 donation, you get a pre-order. So it's basically pre-ordering the album, but it also helps us meet the goal for the fundraiser too, so it's like a double win. And then we have some other rewards for the higher donation tiers, like we're only giving physical CDs to certain levels of backers. We're not actually going to be like putting the physical CD out there. It's mostly going to be a digital album on Spotify and iTunes, etc. But if you do want a physical CD, you can look, there's a pledge amount for that, and all sorts of other good stuff. So definitely be sure to check out the fundraiser for the album. Alright, so let's get into some of this music. I'm going to come up over to the computer to put some of the music on the screen so you guys can follow along if you want. And I think we're going to start with Corelli today. I had done Vivaldi on the last stream, which some of you guys know. If you were here last time, but we are going to do Corelli, and the only problem, no, you can't hear me as well when I come over here. The only problem with the Corelli part is that it's horizontal photos, you'll see here. So it's not as great for showing in the live stream, but you'll still have the music there, and like I've said before, sorry, I keep covering myself, I do recommend full screening the video if you're trying to follow along with the part, and I am of course playing that second line, which is the bass line or the Basso Continuo part. So we'll start here with Corelli. I'm going to go back to my chair. Oops, I didn't even realize I'm totally covering myself over here with the music. Maybe I can actually shift the music to the other side. Might be better. And maybe down lower. Let's see what we can do here. Down there, over here, let's try this. As you can see, we don't have the best luck with the horizontal paper, makes it a lot harder for the stream. So yes, the album is going to be on Spotify. So because it's on Spotify, and I'm going to have it on YouTube also, it's technically available for free. I mean, people can stream it for free and listen to it for free, which means that if you pledge to the fundraiser, you're actually helping make this music available to people for free. Like, you're sort of a part of bringing the album to life for people, which is really cool. And yeah, I think our schedule's not totally figured out yet, but if we have time during recording, I'm hoping that Laura and I can do some live streams too. We have such a tight schedule. We're going to be recording and rehearsing in just a couple of days, but I'm hoping that we can figure out some cool stuff to do while she's here. Okay, so let's get into this Corelli Sonata. We're going to start with the first movement, slow movement. We're going to see how this works now with me playing. I guess I could play here. Yeah, this kind of works. Horizontal pages, not ideal. It's actually fine when it's sitting on the music stand. It's just not really good for the stream. I guess this works. I gotta move my music stand. Alright, and I think I did play this one on my last live stream, but might as well just start from the beginning and then we'll kind of go from there. immediately you can take a look at this movement and see how the bass line part is already kind of takes over, has a melodic role from the beginning. And that is why we chose sonatas like this that would have more interplay in the parts than just the bass line being just kind of nothing. Not like bass lines are nothing, they're always important. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this, and as I think of things to talk about and work on, I'll just share them with you guys. And feel free to ask your questions, whatever you want to do. Nice. So much to talk about in that already. And some of these things, again, I've said this, I'll say this for the last time. Anyone who watched the other live stream where I did Vivaldi first, I'm going to repeat a lot of the same points, but it definitely applies. And of course, if you haven't seen that stream, I want to give you guys that information. So let me just check in with you guys before I get into it. About the shorter fingerboard on the Baroque cello. It doesn't actually affect the sound. It does mean, of course, that you can play up higher without playing over the fingerboard because you've got more to work with there. But just like on modern cello, we aim to not really play over the fingerboard when we can. Sometimes for soft sounds we can come up a little, but we can also just do that with pressure, so you don't necessarily have to be drastically changing your contact point. The shorter fingerboard was just from practicality's sake. They didn't play the notes all the way up there. You know, the big concertos had not been written yet with those crazy notes up there, so we didn't need those last few inches. So let's talk about some things here. For one, we get this little motif with a combination of 8th and 16th notes multiple times, and that just poses a little bit of a bowing issue right away, because if I were to start down bow, when I get to the second half of the measure, if I were to just play that as it comes, I would end up starting the next measure on an up bow, which I would probably want to avoid because I want to be down bows at the beginning of the measure. So there's a couple options when you have this 8th with 16ths in it kind of rhythm. One option is doing an up on the last two 8th notes, So obviously the first beat, because it's missing the downbeat, that ends up fine because that's 4 notes. It's an even amount of notes. So it's the second half of the measure and what follows that I'm mostly talking about. So up, up. That's one option for to keep your bowing on track for a rhythm like this, is to do an up, up. But what I find about the up, up, it works in certain situations, and it's definitely, if this were a faster tempo, I might advocate for the up, up. It would just make things go a little quicker, I think, with the up, up. You can also do a new down bow on the 16ths to keep yourself on track, so I'll show you that option. That's the option that I'm choosing, mostly because this very first little phraselet that has this motif is missing the downbeat, and the phrase really starts right on the 16ths. So by doing a new down bow on the 16ths, it creates that sort of starting on the 16th note feel. I wouldn't maybe do it randomly, but because already doing a new down bow on the 16ths works for us logistically for the bowing, the fact that it also helps the phrasing of feeling like we kind of start the phrase on the 16th notes is just another supporting reason to use that bowing. Because I hear that A as the resolution of the first part of the phrase, and then is a new thing. I'm exaggerating, but I think that the down bow helps sort of bring that out. Another option that a modern print edition might do is slur the 16ths. I don't advocate for that, but I'll show it to you. That's what we might see in a modern print. And for 18th century music, that might be okay, like Vivaldi and Bach, potentially. But for this earlier 17th century repertoire, Corelli, I like to keep separate bows when I can, not add slurs if they're not already there. So I'm going to keep it separate bow and do new down bows, and that's what I did in my first playthrough. But I just wanted to discuss that because that is this kind of rhythm you see all the time, and you're always going to have those options. Do you do an up-up on the last 2 8th notes, or do you do a new down bow on the 16ths, or do you slur the 16ths? Those are basically the options you're working with in that rhythm. Going onwards from there, let's talk about maybe some larger phrase things. So for one, when I have all of these things on the off beats, meaning I just rest on the downbeat, I want to be really, really light on those. I don't want to be coming in it's just kind of obnoxious. So keeping everything really light. Again, we don't have Laura here. If she were here playing on the top part, then I could see what kind of mood she's setting, what kind of articulation she's doing, because all of that always affects us as a continuo player, because we want to be matching or accommodating or supporting whatever it is they want to be doing musically. So right now I'm speaking more on general terms, just how I would approach these bass lines without an individual playing the other part. Hey there, hey guys, everyone is just joining, just checking in with the chat. We are playing some Corelli, just getting into it, talking about bass lines. Okay, so moving forward, so staying light. These are like little commentary. It's kind of like the violin says something and then the audience says something back, or it echoes back. So we really don't need to be overly present on a little motive like that. Then as we get back more into the melodic material, which is the stuff including 16th notes, it's a fake out, right? Because we think we're gonna just arrive there right on the cadence, but the bass line has a rest and the violin gets to take over. So in a situation like that, I like to kind of build up the intensity and then makes the surprise all the more effective. And then back to our little commentary. But then we get to look that moment is because the violin is going to be coming in with eighth notes that move right with me. And we are in a slow movement. We want to be a little bit more languid there. So looking for those moments where we can come out and be melodic and play with a more legato sound, but not take over and make the whole movement a bunch of mush, basically. So that's what I would do about that. Now, other little basic step one of really playing Baroque music, but especially playing bass lines, the general rules I'm working with are notes that have a large interval between them, or really any interval that is not stepwise or conjunct motion, are going to be a shorter articulation. So especially something like octaves are going to be on the shorter side, whereas when we have stepwise motion, we can be more legato. So there's both in one phrase. And now remember that these are just guidelines. It's a great starting place, but of course, there are many ways to play short. There are many ways to play legato. We can play legato but still be transparent. We can play legato and be really full. We can be short and still have a legato sound, which is what I'm trying to do because this is an adagio. I don't want to play super dry. That just wouldn't make sense in a slow movement. So I'm managing to be short while still creating some resonance, creating some longer space. I'm not playing. That would be actual legato. Okay, we talked about different intervals. Let's look ahead. By the way, because these are scores that I'm using, I'm mostly going to refer, and they're not numbered measures, by system. So that's the group of two lines as one system. So I am now in the second system, and maybe I'll just play from the beginning of the line, but I am thinking about the little growing sequence that's going to happen in the middle of this system. But let's see what else we have to play with here in the second system. So we want to be building towards that. So you can hear I'm choosing to get louder at the A minor cadence to do a crescendo into that, but it could be the inverse. Again, Laura's going to be in charge because these are going to be her violin parts. But two options. So I'll play you what I just did, which is crescendoing into that cadence. I'm going to go from, it's the 1, 2, 3rd measure of the second system. So there's the crescendo. Let's try it the opposite. So it could go either way. But now what we have is this nice sequence. And this is definitely going to crescendo because we are going upwards in register, so I want to start soft. Just like I called it, we have octaves already, and then after the octaves, we have to address these eighth notes that come right before. So all these eighth note pickups to the octaves, they're stepwise, right? They're just one note below the octave. So in theory, that means we should play them legato, right? But here's me playing them legato. The reason it doesn't it works so well is it's on a weaker part of the beat. And if you don't know about strong and weak, it's another one of the common Baroque principles. Basically, within a measure, there are stronger beats and weaker beats. In a 4/4, the strong beats are the first beat and the third beat, with the weaker beats, or the off beats as we sometimes call them, being the second and the fourth. In a 3/4, the strongest beat is the first, followed by the second, followed by the third. 1, 2, 3. And then within the beats, we have strong parts of the beat and weak parts of the beat. So if we were to subdivide a quarter note into 2 eighth notes, the first eighth note would be the strong one, the second eighth note would be the weak one. Strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. So all these eighth note pickups that we have are on the weaker parts of the beat. So if I over legato them, I'm actually going to put too much emphasis on the wrong part of the beat. And it's really important to keep that beat hierarchy in Baroque music as best we can, because that's what gives it the lightness and the dancey feel. It's when everything gets kind of heavy and equals the same amount of weight that things get a little lost. So even if I decide that I do want to play legato on those eighth note pickups, I have to make sure that I'm not over accenting them because they are on a weaker part of the beat. So let me play you an example where I play legato, but I make sure to not over accent them. So basically what I'm doing is I'm keeping the bow on the string and making it long, but I'm just not putting a lot of weight and resonance in it. I'm just allowing the bow articulation to be more smooth. Yes, I love my Baroque bow. So I did get this from a maker who's not even in business anymore in Staten Island, but I didn't get it direct from the maker, actually. I got it from an instrument dealer who had these bows. This bow is by Christopher English, and he is still making bows as far as I know. He may have a website or something. If you Google Christopher English Baroque bow, you can see, because I do think his bows are also carried. Various dealers do carry them. I absolutely love this bow. It is a professional level Baroque bow, so definitely worth looking to Christopher English. And yeah, the ones that are available online that are more just like kind of student models, there's not a lot to choose from. I mean, a lot of people do ask for like more inexpensive models. If you go to school or university, you can ask. Sometimes like a music school will have a Baroque bow or two. Sometimes opera cello, sometimes it's only for violin, and you can borrow it. A lot of people borrow bows and instruments before they're able to get their hands on their own. So borrowing isn't a good option if you can explore, what's around you. But Christopher English made my bow, and I do really, really love this bow. It's African blackwood. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Just checking in with all my stuff. Okay. Let's keep going with some Corelli. Thanks to everybody being here. If you've just joined recently, I'm playing the bass lines off of my album that I'm recording later this month. We're still looking for funding, so please check out the fundraiser to learn all about the album. Can't make it any more clear. The link is huge. All right. So that gives us a pretty good feeling about all of that stuff. We have some really nice octave melodic action going on in the last system that I want to play one more time. So we'll talk about that. And you'll see how I choose. It's actually going to be a similar point that I talked about with the Vivaldi Sonata. So let me play this last system. And a couple things also about these manuscript facsimile copies, if you're not used to reading off of this. The note system and the clefs and all that is the same. There's just some minor differences. One difference is that they are not afraid to break up a measure across the line. In modern print, we kind of did away from that and made sure that we always had a complete measure together. But as you can see, if you look at the second system, we have only 4 eighth notes at the end of that line, and then the other 2 beats are on the next line. So if there's a little squiggle at the end, it often indicates that the measure continues on to the next line. So sometimes we have measures that are broken up across the line. The score does not line up vertically, meaning the beats are not in all the same places from the violin to the cello or the Basso Continuo part. Obviously, the notes will still come at the right time, but they didn't bother about actually aligning the parts with the beats in those days. And then in terms of accidentals, a modern convention that we have is if a note is written in as an accidental, that accidental carries through for the rest of the measure. That was not the case here. The accidental was just good for the note that it was on, and if you saw that note again, it was back to whatever the key signature indicated. And they also did not use natural signs very often as accidentals. They would use a flat. So for example, if there was an F sharp that they wanted to make to an F natural, they would just mark it as an F flat, meaning F sharp flattened down to F natural. So that's that. And then all these little numbers that you're seeing over the bass part is the actual figured bass of the basso continuo. So if a chordal instrument were playing this continuo part, like a harpsichord or a lute, they would be able to what we call realize or play the harmony of the bass line. It's like a jazz chart almost. It's telling the continuo player which chords are being implied in the bass line, so that if you play a chordal instrument, you can fill in all the notes of the chord. For my purposes playing the bass line, I don't need to play the chords. I'm just reading the bass notes that are there, but that figured bass does inform me of what the overall harmony is. Now, I'm going to play the last system and talk about this little octave melodic jump thing we have going on. Okay, I just want to talk about that part. Sound familiar to anybody? That famous Bach aria, which by the way was written after this piece. Just saying, Bach borrowed a lot of material. Not saying he stole it directly from this, but a lot of the things that we know that are like popular, recognizable tunes, something very similar dates back much earlier than that. So this is a classic example of playing two different voices in the bass part, which we have fairly often. Voices meaning two different implied parts. And a lot of times we'll be playing something on cello, the lower two strings in the bass range, and then jumping up to the A string in a more melodic range. So these are, of course, different voices. We have... And then we have... as the bass voice. So what I like to do, usually as a go-to, to differentiate when I have two voices in the continuo part like this, is make the top part a little bit more legato, so it has a more melodic quality, and make the bass part a little bit more short to give it more of a bass line quality, and then we instantly have two different voices. And then you can go further from there with different colors and sounds and pressures, but that right away will give it a distinction. Something to think about. That's only a short example of something like that. Sometimes you get a part like that that goes on through the whole movement. So that's a good start for the first movement. Let's look at some more, and I know now we're going to have bigger pages. I'm going to have to come over and switch the page. Yeah, so let's look at this Allegro, and I can only put one page up at a time for you guys, so... But this will be enough for us to at least get the flavor, because we're not going to go probably all the way through this movement anyway. Okay, so first let me get the page on there, and then we'll talk about this first Allegro. And again, this is the Corelli Sonata. I believe these are Opus 5 Corelli violin sonatas. This is the first. I'm not a violinist, so I don't have to have this memorized. It is the third sonata in C major. Let me come over here. We're going to get this Corelli out of here. And we'll get this one. All right. So this movement, like I said, has more than one page, but we're going to start with just this page right on my face. Perfect. And again, full screen in if you're really trying to read along. This will be enough to get us started. And so what I talked about that I do when I'm getting to know a piece, like let's say that I don't even know this at all, and I'm thinking, okay, how does this go? What am I going to do? I like to pull up a recording, not to copy the recording, just to get some context, because especially if you play a bass line, you might not always know what's going on based on your part. You have a very important part in the music, but that doesn't mean you're fully informed as to what everyone else is doing. So it's nice to just pull up a recording, sort of get an idea about what's happening in the music, and then go from there. So that's what I'm going to do. I just use Spotify. And the recordings that I have of Corelli here are actually just with harpsichord, so it's not going to be a one-to-one, my cello part to the harpsichord, but I can get an idea for the movement. And what I actually want to hear is the violin part, because that's what I'm going to be thinking about as I play this. Okay, so that gives me a little bit of an idea of what I'm working with. And as you can see, this movement we're probably not going to spend a ton of time on because a lot of this is interplay with the violin. So there's only so much that I can really work on in detail by myself, but we might as well check in with the movement, talk about what we can talk about, and then from there, keep going through the movements. Are there any well-known female composers? Well, there's Clara Schumann, right? Well-known, I would just have to say no, not really. But more and more groups and ensembles I've noticed are making a point to programming women, female composers, which is really cool, to try to get this music more out there. But certainly not a lot of super well-known, especially when we go back towards the Baroque era. There's just not as many that we have in commonplace. But I think that is going to change as more people start teaching about the composers and programming their music. Hopefully in our modern day understanding of classical music, we can have more female composers. Hey, Jonathan. Such an interesting start to this movement, so I want to talk about it. Almost any time that you have a syncopation like that, where you suddenly have a very important sort of present hit on a weak beat, right? It's the second beat in a 4/4, so that's a weak beat. So normally that would mean we don't emphasize it, but there's of course always exceptions to the rule. As you can see, we have this big half note right in the middle of the measure, so it actually kind of indicates, okay, we want to make something of this second beat. So often in these instances, I will do a new down bow on a note like that. However, because of what follows, which is kind of interesting, as you could probably tell from the little preview I played on my phone, the rhythm of this movement is a little bit all over the place. We don't get a clear pulse right away. So the only problem with doing that down bow, which I really want to do when I see the first measure, is that it actually ends up backwards by the end of the phrase. So now that I'm thinking about the entire phrase, meaning going all the way to that cadence on the downbeat of the third measure, maybe I don't want to do another down bow just because it'll work itself out better if I don't. So let's try the option of no down bow. That ends up pretty nice, but it doesn't give me the same oomph on that second beat. So that's something that probably when I get together with Laura, or if you get together with your solo player, if you're playing Continuo, you can discuss what kind of feeling do we want on that second beat? What works better, the down bow or the up bow? These are the kind of options you're dealing with. So for now, I'm actually not going to do the down bow, even though I started off by saying I was going to do the down bow. I'm going to take it out since the bowing works out nicer if I don't do a double down, and then play a little further. So already my articulation is short because this is a faster movement. So even though I still have 8th quarter pickups like I had in the last movement, I'm playing them totally differently in this faster tempo. Okay, I'm going to skip over my measure of rest and keep going. Cool, so now we get this nice chromatic descending thing, fun. You can see the flat thing that I was just talking about, which is that if you're looking in the middle of the second system where we get the chromatic descending, you can see the G sharp and then it's marked as a G flat. That's just a G natural, and same for the F sharp and the F flat. So anytime we have stepwise notes, we typically want to make them legato. But when we have chromatic notes, we really want to make them legato because that's really exciting. Those notes are close together. We want to bring out that closeness by playing legato. And then we're getting into a larger jump, right? For those ones. So I'm going to shorten up once I get to the 5th lead because that's also setting up our cadence too. And generally cadences are going to have short articulations, mostly because they're going to have octave jumps. And then there's our cadence. Let's see here actually. So look at that. It's that same rhythm that we saw in the first movement, right? Where I talked about doing a new down bow on the 16ths. But now that I'm in this fast tempo, maybe I want to do up instead of a new down bow. And sorry if you don't play a bowed instrument, I'm talking so much about bowings, but I think that this can apply because the bowings affect the articulation, so you can kind of translate it for yourself. But so if I take this rhythm, let's try it with the up, that's what I did naturally. That's what I think will work the best. Let's try that and then talk. Let me do that again better. Okay, let me do a new down bow, see what that's like. So it's clearer in a sense. It does come out clearer, but it's a little weighty in a fast tempo to do all those down bows. So I would argue, even though it comes out clearer, the better option is just to practice the one with the up bows. I think that's better. We get a better phrase that way too. New down bows are great, but sometimes going back and forth just helps group things together, especially when we have a lot of notes in a faster tempo. We want to be grouping things a bit, so that helps. And as you can see, violin starts to go crazy and we're just hanging out. This last system of this movement, whenever you see your soloist go nuts, playing a lot of notes, especially things with a lot of jumps, which take time, the last thing you want to do is plow through the continuo part. You don't just play your part like you're just cruising along along with quarter notes. Every single note has to be really paying attention to all the acrobatics that the upper part is doing. That's your job, is to be there and support their part. So you can't play your part in a vacuum ever, but especially when they have a lot of technical stuff going on. And it's a very easy trap because our part to the naked eye looks easy. Like, oh, we're just playing quarter notes, just going along playing quarter notes. But when you see the other part right there, it's got a lot more than that going on, and you have to be aware of that. So I can't really demonstrate that without the other part, but I did want to bring that up. Okay. I think that's kind of it for this movement, though, and I was only going to go for an hour and a half today, and we're already at an hour, which is awesome. But I think we can keep moving past this movement, because I think we talked about most of the Continuo specific things. So let's look ahead, and we can also do stuff besides Corelli. But let's see what else we got here. Okay, we got a nice slow movement. That might be worth looking at a little bit. So let me put that up. Another Adagio, which will be a little lonely without Laura, but we'll make it work. Get this thing off my face. We actually don't even need the bottom because we're not going to go into the Allegro just yet, but this will get us started. I wish I could cut the bottom off. I probably can, but I'm not going to bother. Okay. So let's hear a little preview of this Adagio to give us some context. Again, it's with harpsichord on this recording that I'm pulling up. Okay, that is a super slow tempo. I'm going to advocate for not such a slow tempo. I think when you're playing these sonatas with harpsichord, you can do any tempo, honestly, because the harpsichord can fill so much because it's playing chords, because it's got all those notes at its disposal. But for playing it on two-string instruments, I don't think we're going to want to go super slow because we can't fill the sound the same way. So I'm not going to go quite as slow as what I just played. But what you can see right away looking at the score, the violin plays this very strange kind of evocative thing with these huge leaps to a dissonant interval right away. And then what happens? The continuo part plays it right back, which is always cool. That's why this feels duetty, because the continuo gets its turn. So let's just play a little of this, see what presents itself. Already I'm thinking about bowings, which I'm going to do whatever Laura does, right? Because she's going to be playing this top line, and I'm going to be playing it right back. So I'm going to mirror her bowing. But because it's a 3/4, there's always a lot of options because, we end up with odd number bowings, get us backwards all the time. I'm going to scoot over a little bit more. I'm going to try starting up bow. Yeah, I actually like that because what are we doing? We're going right to that G sharp. That's our exciting, dissonant, weird surprise interval. Remember that everything was about harmony and dissonance in the Baroque period. If we have a note that's clashy or weird, we want to bring that out and really make something of it. So I'm going to try that, and I'm going to play a little bit more of the part now.
Elusive movement, definitely hard. If you watch the Vivaldi part that I played on the other Continuo live stream, way more straightforward. It was kind of like you could tell right away what was going on in the music from the bass part. Not so much here, but we still had a lot to work with. And what I think is the hardest part in a movement like this, 3/4 always poses a lot of problems with bowings, like I mentioned, because everything gets backwards constantly with the odd numbers. But then in this, we actually get the actual beat displaced all the time. Like, is this the downbeat? Is this the downbeat? Or now there's a rest here. And so actually just problem-solving bowings, I think it would be the hardest thing in this movement. And the options that you have in the 3/4 are things like a down, up, up. Or sometimes what I like to do is if I cadence, like let's say that's the downbeat and then something else happens, I'll actually go down bow on the downbeat and then down bow again on the second beat if the second beat starts a new phrase. So that's another option for bowing. But that's kind of most of what's going on there. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much on this movement either, because again, without the violin part, we don't have as much of an idea what's going on. A donation just came in. Whoop! I need like a little bell, a little thing to like ding, ding, ding. So thank you, Ariel, if you're watching the stream, which I assume you would be if you donated right at this moment. So thank you so much. It's a $10 donation, so that's a pre-order right there. So guys, if you're watching and you want to help support the album, it would be so much appreciated. We're about halfway. We're doing great, but we don't have a lot of time left. So again, just a $10 donation gets you the album. It's basically just buying the album. It's not even throwing your money away. Or if you want to contribute more, there's cool rewards for higher donation levels too. And that link is, of course, right below me and also in the description. So, okay, enough of this. Do we want to do more Corelli, or should I jump to some Handel, which I might want to do? Yeah, why not? Why not go to some Handel? Just to switch it up a little, because we got a lot of Corelli going on so far in the stream. So I think what I actually want to do for Handel is I'm going to do one of the movements that Laura and I actually did record for the album, just kind of casually for fun. So there is a video. If you guys like this movement, you can go find that video. Actually, all the videos of me and Laura playing together are on our Indiegogo page for the album. Like if you go to the Indiegogo page and you press play, it'll show you the video about the album, but then you can click through and it's got all the videos we've ever done together, which is a nice little handful. So this Handel that I'm about to do, and I'll switch the sheet music up there, we did already record, and this bass line is super fun, so I think it would be a good one to do on the stream. Man, I already got my pages out of order. I always do that. I think I have this system with all my papers on the floor, and then I still mess it up. Okay, let's get Handel, and this is the third page of the Handel score, so let's get rid of this. Okay, and I can't show you both pages at once. Oops, I moved myself. But we'll start with the first page. Okay,
little hydration. Okay. So here we go, Handel Sonata. This is Sonata number 12. It is technically for violin, I'm pretty sure, but if you guys are familiar with any of the Handel, like, kind of solo repertoire stuff, he wrote a bunch of sonatas that are, like, for flute or violin, like, kind of any treble instrument works and can perform them. So let's look at this cute Allegro. And I guess what I'll do is just play the first page, since that's all you guys can look at. And a lot of the material is recycled in the second half. So let's play down this first page and see what we have to talk about. Oh, ding, ding, ding. Another. Thank you so much, Justin. Another $10 donation. That gets him the album. Thank you so much, Justin. Okay, let's hear some Handel. That made me think twice about B flats and B naturals. So another fun part of these old scores. So I mentioned some of the things that were actual conditions of the old scores that they didn't do. But another thing that you encounter all the time with old scores is actual errors in the part, just like accidentals that aren't marked. So usually that's when you have to use your music theory knowledge, or you got to go check with another part. But I do not have a B natural marked in the second system. But as you can see, Laura plays a B natural in that measure, practically in the same beat, which pretty much indicates that I'm going to play a B natural too. I'm not going to be playing a B flat against her B natural. So that's why you got to use your problem solving. So that's going to be a B natural. Let's start this again. And again, I'm doing this at a little bit more of a practice tempo, but that's kind of how I want to approach these to start. So I'm going to start this again. So kind of fun. We're already getting a lot of activity, and what I would say right away is, because this is a super fun Allegro, I'm keeping all the articulation light except for the 16th note scales. That I can be a little more legato on. But especially if I put this up to tempo, everything's going to lighten up. And so on. Let's go on to the second half. Back to a practice tempo. You can see I have these kind of interjections with the 16ths, like at the very end of the second system. We expect to just kind of cadence there, but instead the bass line gets to play a little doodle ditty. And there's a lot of that, which I think makes this sonata kind of a cute, fun thing. We can also see that we're sort of moving forward in a sort of harmonic sequence in the second part. I'm going to make that a little more obvious and play the second part again. So we expect a cadence, but we actually end with a little question, right? respond to ourselves. And now new sequence. So that's the same musical material up a note. And then again. So we basically have the same measure up a note 3 times, right? Or what we call a sequence. So anytime we have something like that, there's a couple basic things to look at. One, are the notes going up or down in the sequence? Like, do we start at a lower note and go to a higher and go to a higher? If so, usually a crescendo is in order if we're moving up in notes. If we're going down in notes, maybe a decrescendo. It could go either way. The most important thing is that you're creating an arc with this sequence. So if the sequence lasts for 3 measures or 4 measures, it has to feel like it is progressing musically over those 3 or 4 measures. You don't want to be playing that same exact musical material up a note, but playing it the same way every single time. The harmony also gives you a lot of clues. So when we start off, we're in like our kind of F major-y, happy, normal place that we've been, the key of this piece. Then as we go on, we get this B natural, which starts to take us somewhere else, so a little more interesting. But then when we get the C sharp is when things get real. And then we can do something totally different. So again, of course, the violin part is going to be playing at the same time. So we want to be factoring in however the violinist wants to do this phrasing, but it goes hand in hand, what the violin is doing and what the continuo part is doing. We are both progressing by sequence each measure. Okay. So that touches on that. I'm going to play this part through again and see if anything else strikes me to talk about. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this movement and play through just this page. One thing I'm noticing is that we often have these little phrases on the second part of the measure. This motive, for example, that I have in the bass comes on the second measure a lot. So it's worth kind of acknowledging anytime you see something repeated or something that's starting in a place that isn't the downbeat, make note of it. Maybe you want to make it more of an obvious thing. Okay, this little motive happens in the second part of the measure. That's more important than the beginning of the measure. Certain things like that. It's always worth just observing the patterns. I'll start right on the second system. And I think anytime you have something like this at the end, it can be a little rustic. Okay, going on. So also knowing when you have a big scale like that, does it belong to the previous measure or is it a lead in to the next measure? It's usually a lead in to the next measure. So making a little comma, space, breath, however you want to think of it, that really makes it belong as a pickup to the next measure. So if I were to do it not like a pickup, here's an example. I'm on the last system now. Yeah, here, okay, I've got it. This is how it's going to be not a pickup to the next measure. Right? That's just in time. That's what's written. Or there's maybe supposed to be a C sharp or a B natural. Or the B flat is in the key signature, but I think it actually might need to be a B natural. A lot of errors in this facsimile, sadly. It's definitely supposed to be a B natural, even though it's a B flat in the key signature, so I'm going to change that. So that's what it would be if you just played it normal. Now I'm going to play it like it's really a lead-in to the next measure. You hear the difference? So I'll do it again. So there's a couple things I'm doing. One, I'm cadencing really lightly on the first low A before I go up to the high A, so that this can kind of closes off, and then this comes in strong as a new thing. So one of it is dynamic, the other thing is a tiny bit of timing. So listen again. And with a couple little details like that, now it sounds like a lead into the next measure instead of just, here I am playing the rhythms exactly as they're written. Those little details really go a long way in making your playing kind of interesting. Okay. Wow, we're already going strong. Only about 15 minutes left, so maybe only like one more movement of something. Yeah, I might switch to Vivaldi for the last movement. But so, if you have just joined recently, I am practicing the Basso Continuo bassline parts for my brand new album with my great friend Laura, who's an awesome Baroque violinist. We're recording 3 Baroque violin sonatas on period instruments. It is going to be a great album. The music is really not overly obscure, not overly popular. It's like that perfect middle zone that should appeal to everybody. It sounds great to everybody. We have a very modest fundraiser trying to raise the money because we're going to be producing this album all by ourselves. We don't have to pay an engineer, a producer, a label, anything. We're doing it all just us. So the money really just pays us for our time and helps us get the album out there. It's going to be primarily a digital album, so it's going to be on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you want to listen to it. And a $10 donation gets you a digital copy of the album. So it's like just picking up your copy early, and then it helps us meet the goal of our fundraiser. And there's also cool rewards if you want to pledge even more than that with like behind the scenes stuff. We're going to be filming videos the whole time and blooper reels and everything, so we'll have extra content for people too. So I think for my last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to play this first movement of the Vivaldi Sonata that we'll be doing. And I did play this on my other bassline live stream, but it is just such a great bassline. I just really, really like this one. So I think it'll be a nice way to close the stream, especially for people who did not see the other stream. So that's not it. Let's see. That's not it. That's not it either. Where's the first page of Vivaldi? Let's find it. Okay. Oops. There we go. So again, if you are following along with the part, I recommend full screening the video. And since we are going to be wrapping up soon, this is going to be the last movement I'm going to do for today. Feel free to throw your questions in the chat. If you're on the fence about donating, you got a little bit of time left if you want to shout out on the stream. You can, of course, donate anytime, and if you're watching the stream replay, of course, your donation is accepted at any point. And give the video a thumbs up if you're liking it. That just lets YouTube know that people are enjoying the video and helps get it out there to more people. Okay, so this piece is probably the most popular on the album, this Vivaldi Sonata. It's going to just make such a great violin-cello duet, honestly, though, because the continuo part really does give the cello an opportunity to really be an active member of the ensemble, which is great. Hey, Gabriel, thanks for making it. Okay, so I'm just going to start by just playing down this bass line, and then I'll just bring up some of the things that I am thinking about while playing it. course, slowed down the last time. So much great stuff in this movement. So I'm integrating a bunch of things that we already talked about in this stream. So one, stepwise motion being legato and other jumps being more staccato. We get that right away in the first couple measures. Short pickup, but then immediately legato. Dissonance there. The C to the F sharp, so I want to bring out the F sharp because that dissonant interval is very expressive. So I'm making a point of bringing out the expressiveness of that interval. And the only other thing to mention with this legato, I naturally want it to crescendo. We're going up in notes, we're going to crescendo. But I'm going to want to be mindful of the violin part, that I'm not covering it up, because if I were to really pump the legato, there would be no room for the violin to play there. So I'm keeping my sound still transparent while making it smooth. Very fine details to just not overpower with the continuo playing. And then we, after we get our little melodic thing, with our dissonant interval, then we go to short articulation for the cadence. After that, we reach another two voices situation, where I'm going to play the top voice more legato to make it more melodic, and the bottom voice shorter to make it more bassline-y. So there's that little sequence. So you can see right away how many of the same things appear in so much of this music. Like, we get so many of the same ideas and the same principles across this repertoire. So once you have different strategies for how to approach them, how to problem solve them, how to make them musical, then you can really play any bass line practically. You end up seeing a lot of the same stuff. So that's why it's really good to know all these principles. Okay. Anything else to talk about there? I talked a lot about this movement already in the other stream, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. But you can see right away, looking at the score, just how much interplay there really is between the two parts. Let me play the second half. See how many things you guys can pick out of all the various topics we've already talked about today. So from the second part, which is the third system, a few measures in. So the whole movement plays around with this two voices idea. We have this obvious melody going up the A string while interspersed with the bass line part going at the same time. So it's always good to be able to multitask those parts. How do you make them really sound like two voices and not connect them so it just becomes a fluid mush? I'm using the word mush a lot, but that's what we want to avoid. Yeah, so I feel like 2 minutes is not enough to do another movement, so I think we should call it on this, ending on some Vivaldi. We did, how many? 2 movements, 3 movements of Corelli we looked at, which was good. So you guys are getting the real VIP experience of this repertoire, just hearing the bass line, by itself. but I think you guys are really going to love it once you actually hear the real album with both of us playing, because of course this is just the accompaniment that I'm playing. You know, certainly not as exciting as having the violin, but still nice to hear it, right? Let's get the music stand out of the way. So maybe I'll sit in my chair. I'll have to sit on the floor. So thank you guys for watching today. It feels like it went by really fast. I typically stream for like an hour, hour and a half, but I guess I have done like some 2-hour streams before. So the album we are recording later this month in June. Must be, is it 2 weeks away now? So recording's going to be great. When Laura's here, we'll have tons of stuff on the channel, you know, obviously on all my social media stuff. Emily Plays Cello on Instagram, Facebook, everything. We'll be sharing our process along the way while we're recording. It's going to be a super fun time. And then the album, I'm hoping to have it out by late summer, if we can manage by like the end of August, maybe early September, to actually release the album. And of course, you're going to get it first if you're on the Indiegogo. And you'll get special thanks from us, and you'll get to know that you were a part of helping the album come to life. My first album in 4 years. I can't believe it's been that long since I made a CD. So it's a long time coming. I think it's going to be awesome. So thank you guys for watching the stream. Not a lot of questions today, but that's totally cool. Maybe I'll do a Q&A live stream again. You know, my channel was, for so long, the bulk of it was just performance videos where I just played at home and recorded and put the video up. But after doing so many of those, you know, there's only so many solo Baroque cello pieces that I can play at home and record. You know, I've been focusing more on like doing live streams, doing Q&A, featuring other people on my channel, like collaborators. If you happen to play an early music instrument and you're interested in being featured on my channel, you can learn all about that too. I don't know if I have a link on this video, but if you go on my channel, you'll see any video of someone else. It'll talk about the collaborator program, or you can go to emilyplayscello.com/collaborators. And I've got a whole form there you can fill out if you want to be featured on the channel. I'm just trying to expand what the channel offers besides just me playing my cello. So branching out a little bit, this album is definitely going to beef up the channel with lots of good videos and stuff too. Everybody loves Laura's playing. She's a big hit on my channel. If you haven't watched us play together, go to the Indiegogo page because it has all our videos that we recorded together. And that link is right there. And check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me play my bass lines all by myself. I promise it's going to be even better, or a lot better, when the violin is there. So thanks again, you guys. And if you're watching after, you know, you're watching the replay of the stream, feel free to leave questions in the comments. And yeah, more streams soon, everything, lots of stuff coming soon. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you will know first. So glad you guys liked it, and I will see you next time.